morning. Welcome to the first tabletop exercise in IDEA's Mutual Assistance for District Energy, the MADE program. You know, we're excited to bring this unique training event to you. Thank you for attending. I see attendees are beginning to log in, so I'm going to go on with a little housekeeping first. Today, you're going to learn in detail about the IDEA MADE program. It's important to know MADE membership is voluntary and free to member systems. As you watch this event, please ask yourself this question: what is the value to my organization of being part of the MADE network? Now, a few housekeeping items. This webinar will be approximately 2 hours long. Please silence your cell phones, panelists, unless you're speaking. As part of this exercise, the presenters, and this is unique, folks, the presenters will ask questions to other MADE member panelists. These active panelists must call in via telephone and will be unmuted. All other attendees will be muted except in 2 points in the presentation where we're going to ask for feedback from all who are logged into this webinar. If you have questions, please type them in the questions in the Q&A box, the lower right-hand corner of your screen. The moderator will field and forward questions to presenters. The presenters will also probably be able to see those questions. So if you see that Q&A box, take a look at it. If you want to chat, you can chat also by selecting either all panelists, or if you pull down that menu that you'll see in the right hand of your screen, there are other options. Host is the chat person you should speak to if you're having technical difficulties. Anything with hooking up with us, with getting your phone hooked up and so on, please chat privately to host. After the presentation, there will be a very brief survey. There are 8 questions. These are golden questions for us. We really, really look forward to your feedback so that we can improve the way we are presenting these tabletop exercises in the future. And the last point, yes, this will be recorded, and the video will be available after the presentation is over. The slide deck will also be available for download. Today's agenda, very briefly, will be the welcome and introductions. We'll provide a background and history of Mutual Assistance for District Energy program for the program itself. And then there'll be the scenario-based discussion. This is the meat and potatoes of what we're doing today. It's the tabletop exercise, TTX. After the TTX is over, we will have a hot wash. That's a new term for me, and I'm thankful to our experts at Con Ed for teaching me the new vernacular. That will be a review of the presentation, and we're open to your questions after that. Then there'll be a brief closing. And now I'd like to turn this over to Vinny Badali. Vinny is the chairman of IDEA Board of Directors, and he is the Director of Distribution and Facility Services at Veolia Energy North America, and a heck of a nice guy. Vinny, it's all yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Len. Good morning, everybody. Mutual Assistance for District Energy was introduced to us at IDEA in 2011 by Rich Boscarino of Con Ed. And Rich had been in Con Ed's STEAM Ops group for some years prior to moving to his emergency management position. And Rich quickly saw that it was obvious that District Energy was missing a program that the other colleagues of ours, the electric and gas people, had for years. So at the time, I happened to be chair of IDEA, and I agreed with Rich. So we made that the development of a mutual assistance program part of my platform as chair. So the next very thing that happened was that we put together a team of IDEA members to help us get it off the ground. And we were very fortunate to have Rob Thornton, Len Phillips, Joel Green of IDEA, and then Pat Davin of Veolia, Tim Merrill of NRG join us. And the next we had Juan Ontiveros of the University of Texas. A very important part that he played in this was that he volunteered to provide us with a template. And it happened to be a really good template that the university uses for their system disaster response. It's a mutual aid program that's in place at the University of Texas at Austin. So that was a great resource. So that was our starting point. We drafted and developed a plan from that. We gave it the name Mutual Assistance for District Energy, and at some point someone realized that MAID was a good abbreviation, so it kind of stuck and made Rich Boscarino a MAID man. But the important part that we're here today to talk about is that we need to do an annual tabletop exercise so that we can practice this program and try to roll it out and get others interested in it. So today we have what's called a blue sky day in I guess tabletop vernacular, but it's kind of cloudy here in Philly, but it's not raining, and that's a good thing. So at this point, though, I'd like to turn it over to another good friend of mine, Ed Conway. Ed's a plant manager at Con Edison's 59th Street Station, and he's currently on the IDA board. Ed?
Oh, Vinny, thank you very much. I'm still a friend? Yes, I guess. So, Vinny, it's always a pleasure working with Vinny. We've teamed up for many years, so I really want to thank Vinny. I also like to thank Len and Chris and Rich for putting this together. I think this is going to be an outstanding exercise. You know, when I think about today, I like to share just some insights. I think today we should really learn as much as we can, build a solid foundation, and try to shy away from being perfect today. This is really going to be a journey. And when I look at different journeys, I look at 4 different foundations to build a good journey. So we should look at these today. The first is developing the right culture. So when you talk about culture, you know, what are our assumptions? Sometimes when we enter these exercises, our assumption might be, well, the storm's not going to hit. You know, what do I have to prepare for it now? I think we got to look away from those assumptions and prepare for the future. The other thing with culture, you look at values. I think all the folks on this call, our values are to make sure our employees are safe and the public is safe, and also having customer service at the top of our list, and that's why we can help each other. And then you look at norms, you know, so we're kind of breaking a norm now. By breaking this norm, typically you look internally and say, how am I going to fight this firefight? But I think by reaching out to the different organizations, we'll be breaking that norm today, and all the prep work as we move through this process, we've been breaking norms. The second pillar I always look to is teamwork. You know, so it's great to see the teamwork on the call. You know, it's great to see us kidding around a little bit. We should have fun on this event, and as we work together, the teamwork will continue to grow and develop. The third pillar is leadership, and it's great to see the leadership on the call. You know, we're trying to engage each other, align, challenge each other to make sure that we have the right resources in place, again, to anytime these firefights come about. And the last piece of in my view, of any good journey is communications. And this conference call today is another step in communicating our vision, where we want to go, how we want to help each other, and keeping our values in mind, which is customer service, safety, and how we have an effective emergency management process for all our customers. So I really just wanted to give some insight and really laying my focus for today would be laying a foundation that we all can grow and develop on. So that's really all I wanted to add today, and I'd like to turn it over to Rich Boscarino. And Rich, thank you for everything you've done.
Ed, thank you, and Vinny, thank you also. Before I start, I also want to thank Len and Cheryl behind the scenes for getting this going today. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in our first annual Mutual Assistance for District Energy Tabletop exercise. By the way, the MAID concept, the term was coined by Vinny Badali himself, so he's the one who came up with it. It kind of stuck, and we're going to keep going with it. Today I'm going to be providing you with a brief background and some history of the program. We'll then take you through some of the steps and components of the MAID program, followed by our expectations, and give you an opportunity to ask questions of us. I'm going to then turn it over to Chris Lieberman, who is with Emergency Management here at Con Edison, and he's going to take you through the actual exercise itself. I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so as you're aware, the IDEA is a nonprofit trade association that helps to facilitate the exchange of information among district energy professionals. The MAID program itself was developed by the IDEA and is administered by the IDEA, but it's driven by its members. So it's important that people are signed on to the agreement and are participating on these calls and can assist or look for assistance during an actual event. Natural disasters can be very disruptive to our district energy systems. When these events occur, timely recovery may require outside assistance from either contractors or mutual assistance crews from other district energy companies. That's where the MAID agreement comes into place. You can go to the next slide, please. So some history. I guess back in 2012, I had gone out to one of the campus seminars, and I presented our mutual assistance, and that's where this really took off. Electric has had mutual assistance for many years now. It's become part of their own business. Over the past 10 years or so, Con Edison has provided assistance and has received assistance from many different companies, going as far out as California and as high up as in Canada. So Electric has really made this part of their business for both receiving and sending out crews. Now, gas, on the other hand, they have mutual assistance agreements. If you ask people in the gas industry about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, do you think that we're going to need mutual assistance? They would have probably told you, no, it's not really that necessary. But I can tell you, over the past 3 to 4 years, mutual assistance has been used very readily in the gas industry, so much so that the AGA, which is the American Gas Association, is going to be hosting their first ever annual tabletop exercise in January of 2014. And also, the Public Service Commission of New York requires that not only electric but gas have mutual assistance agreements in place. So we have gotten to the point where we have an agreement now that we put together that, with the help of the IDEA, it's there to help us and outline what we need to do. We need to start utilizing and making sure that we can test the actual system. Okay. So going to the MAID plan itself. If you have the document available, it might be a good opportunity for you to reference it. But just to let you know, the MAID document is a working reference. Its program is utilized for not only the company that's requesting the assistance, but also the company that's receiving assistance. So, I'm sorry, sending and receiving. I apologize for that. Again, the IDEA is the administrator of the program, but the members are the ones that drive the process. So it's important that we have the agreement in place and that we practice the process so that when we do have an actual event, that we're able to do so. Now, as going to the administrative procedure itself, there are three components I want to talk about. The first one being the cooperation agreement. In the cooperation agreement, it has a hold harmless clause and an indemnification clause so that we limit the liability of the company that is actually sending out assistance. That's very important because without that, most companies would be it would be very difficult for a company to send their crews to another state or another utility without knowing that they're not going to be held liable for the actions taking place there. So that's in the agreement. The next thing it spells out is how reimbursements are made, how the agreement's made, how the billing is done. It spells that out. The requesting organization is also responsible to provide food and lodging for the crews that are being requested. And then lastly, I want to make this very clear. Len mentioned before that this is a voluntary agreement. In addition to it being a voluntary agreement, if you do happen to send your crews out to another utility to assist, and you should happen to have an emergency while your crews are out there, you can recall those crews. It isn't that you're locked into a 2 or 3 week period. We prefer them staying on board for a 2 or 3 week period, but if you have an emergency and you need to pull your crews back, you can do so. And that's important because most companies, again, if they feel that they don't have the ability to do that, they may be very reluctant to send their crews. The next point, the annual tabletop exercise. Again, it's very important that we actually work the plan the work the plan. So on an annual basis, we want to look to have a tabletop exercise where people can all get together, get a good understanding of how the system works, so that, again, as Vinny mentioned, on a blue sky day you want to do this, not when the weather has hit and you have issues. Now, as far as activation of the plan itself, typically I'm going to go through some of the steps. The first one is the requesting organization is going to ask the participants for assistance. So typically that's done on a conference call similar to the one that Chris is going to be hosting in a little while. They're going to explain to you what they're seeing, what kind of issues they're having, and they're also going to be looking for your assistance. The participating organizations are in turn going to tell you or tell the requesting organization what they could provide and how many crews they could provide. Now the requesting organization at that point has the ability to either accept or refuse that offer. Now, you may say, why would you refuse it? Well, if you're only looking for 10 crews and you have 15 crews available to you, you're not going to pull in 15 crews, so you would only accept 10 of those crews. Or in the case where you need crews that next day and the crews that are being offered aren't going to be offered for 3 days, you may not accept them. So that's why you may refuse some crews. Now, as far as the responding organization, there is a confirmation of the equipment and the personnel you're sending, and typically that's sent in writing, and the cooperation agreement is signed by the organizations that are sending the assistance. There'll be an internal briefing letting the people know what they're going to be doing, what their expectations are, and then the responding organization is also going to be providing the requesting organization who their team leaders are, who the coordinators are, and who their backups are, so that the requesting organization knows who to reach out to during an actual event. When the actual crews arrive on site, typically what's done is the first thing is going to be some type of a safety briefing. They're going to go over the company that's receiving assistance, what their safety procedures look like, what their process looks like, what their plans look like, and ensure that the crews that are going to be assisting can help and ensure their safety at the same time. Now, before I turn over to there's also two other components, a model agreement in the actual document which you can review yourself, and several appendices which include check-off lists that will help you as the requesting and receiving organizations. And one of the things that we're working on for the next change is an actual check-off list for this call itself. So that's something that will be coming down the pike. Now, before I turn it over to the next piece, which is a short video, I just want to explain what it is. Before Sandy, as I mentioned before, we had gone through mutual assistance many times in electric and gas, and we had received and sent crews. But typically, when we do that, we're able to send them and house them in hotels. During Sandy, it became impossible to get sufficient hoteling for all of the crews we had. We had over 5,000 crews coming to support us during Sandy for electric. So needless to say, those hotel space wasn't available. So we had to turn to staging areas to do so. What we're going to show now is a short video clip of one of the staging areas we had that held up to 1,000 mutual assistance crews. Now, I'm not saying that when you send your crews, we're going to be sending them to these trailers. What I'm telling you is that before Sandy, we never thought that we were going to need a staging area like this. Yet, after Sandy, we realized that these are things that we have to plan for in the future in order to be prepared for a major event. So if you could start that video, please. Okay, am I off mute now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. All right, I just want to quickly go over some of the expectations now. If you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so provisions of mutual assistance is voluntary and may be influenced by your workload, crew availability, etc. So when a company is requesting mutual assistance, you're going to look at what your current situation is. Whether you were impacted by the storm, whether you have a major project going on currently that you can't release your crews, or whether you do have the ability to actually send crews. So really, it's a voluntary basis. It's definitely influenced by your workload, your current situation, your crew availability, et cetera. So it's important to realize that, again, you want to really look at yourself, look at your ability at that current moment to send crews, and let the requesting organization know what you could do. Now, during this tabletop exercise, or during an actual event, the participating members are asked for assistance from your company. So what we'd like you to do, and Chris is going to touch on this, is we want you to really consider what you can actually do at that time during the actual event, during the call. And then for the purposes of this exercise, this is going to be a single call. But I can tell you that during an actual emergency, the call could start several days before the storm hits, and it could run several days during the storm. So this is just one call. We're going to assume that it was done after the storm hit, but if this was a real event, we may be doing daily calls for several weeks at a time. Now, before I turn it over to Chris to actually start the exercise, I'd like to open it up to see if there are any questions of any of the participants at this point. Any questions?
You did such a good job, there was no question. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so the question from Con Ed was, would this apply to the power plants?
Yeah, and the question, again, was, would this apply to power plants? And the answer would be yes. In the case of Con Edison, if we have several power plants here, if our power plants were flooded, we would be looking for assistance in pumping out those plants. If additional assistance would be needed, we would ask if any of the participating members have the ability to provide additional support as well. Thanks, Ed. Any other questions? Okay, with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chris Lieberman. Chris is a member of the Emergency Management Group here. His primary responsibilities are steam operation. But before his time here with Con Edison, he's been with us for about a year now. He worked with the Westchester County Police for over 20 years. He is a master exercise specialist, and he also, just as a footnote, he was a helicopter pilot for the Westchester County Police as well. So he's got a lot of great experience, a lot of great knowledge, and I'd like to turn it over to Chris at this point.
Thanks, Rich. As was already stated, the purpose of this call is to brief the participants on the nature of a fictitious situation and brief you on the scope of our request for assistance. We'll be asking the participating companies what assistance they can provide and have a discussion where they can clarify any details to expedite the request. It was already stated that we would be having multiple conference calls, so we're going to be compressing a lot of information into this one call right now. With a forecast event, such as a coastal storm, we would very likely initiate conference calls early on in the process to make sure that participating agencies were aware of the situation and we could clarify things in advance to be ready for when the storm hits. For our purpose today, and we can move to the next slide, we're dealing with today. It's real time. It's shortly after 10 a.m. It has been unseasonably cold in the New York area, and we've had an unusually high demand on our steam system. Next slide. We've been hit by the remnants of Hurricane Edna, which made landfall in New Jersey, just south of New York City. It is, from a meteorological point of view, the perfect storm. It's a combination of the worst features of Hurricane Irene and the worst features of Superstorm Sandy. We felt that that would give us the most plausible scenario for us initiating a request for assistance. Just as a snapshot, we were hit at high tide, causing a storm surge of about 14 feet above low water at Battery Park and about 9 inches of rain in Central Park over the last 12 hours. This has caused substantial flooding in the metro area. Winds were in the range of 70 to 80 miles an hour with some peak gusts of 95 miles per hour. The next slide shows you the storm track. It's very similar to Sandy. It came up the Atlantic and then made an uncharacteristic left turn into the metro area. The next slide shows the rainfall totals, which are somewhat artificial, and that's just to give us the ability to engage our partners more realistically during this call. So we were hit by up to about 10 inches of rain, but our partners to the north and south received substantially less. So they're not impacted as severely as we were. The weather forecast, as this storm exits our area, and this is on the, thank you, there's going to be an Arctic air mass moving into the region, causing extremely low temperatures down into the low 30s, persisting in the New York area for the next several days. As a result, the demand on steam is going to be substantial. Because of the scope of this storm, the entire Con Edison company has been hit severely. Electric has already initiated a request for mutual assistance for electric restoration. Gas is fully committed, and gas resources that we could typically rely on for internal mutual assistance to steam are not going to be available. Routine other assets such as contractors are also fully engaged, so we are going to be looking outside the company for assistance. Steam crews have been working almost around the clock for the last several days, with the exception of during the peak storm period, and that's one of the other reasons we're looking for assistance, is to relieve fatigued personnel. We're going to cue a video now for you that was done based on Hurricane Sandy, and it shows some of the preemptive measures that were taken, and that's going to set the stage for us seeking to expedite the restoration. So with that, you can play this video. Okay, the next slide, thank you. As a result of that information, the steam system was preemptively shut down. Because of that, and because of flooded streets and manholes, cold traps, and inadequate crews, numbers of crews to respond to remote alarms, Con Edison's going to be seeking 25 crews during this conference call. Because of the significant efforts that Con Edison has implemented as a result of Sandy, the plants are going to be able to get online fairly quickly, and we're going to try and expedite the restoration process. And we're under tremendous pressure given the weather forecast and political concerns and external stakeholders' interests to get this system up and running as quickly as possible. So with that, I'll go into the next slide, which describes the scope of assistance. We are seeking crews. They should be self-contained, that is, it's personnel with their vehicles and tools and equipment. We'll be looking for additional pumps, specifically pumps that are capable of handling high-temperature water. and we're looking for personnel for a period of up to 2 weeks. Our goal is to restore the system more quickly than that, but that's our worst-case scenario. Because we're dealing with a storm that has already hit, we're looking for these crews to be in our area as soon as possible. At the end of this call, or perhaps during a follow-up call, we would like to clarify what the ETA of your crews will be. We'll discuss the routes of travel and route you around any areas of concern or impassable areas and facilitate travel if there are any permits required or other things like that. We will also want our logistics folks to know the types of vehicles you'll be bringing in, their weights, their types of fuel, and a breakdown of your crew demographics so we can ensure that we have appropriate lodging accommodations for everyone. The next slide, we're going to bring everyone into our Con Edison Learning Center in Queens. For the purposes of our exercise today, that's unaffected. At that location, personnel will be checked in. They'll receive a safety briefing, a system and procedures orientation, and ultimately they'll either be lodged for a future operational period or they'll be given a work assignment and they'll be turned out with local personnel to start work immediately. We'll ensure that everybody before going out has the appropriate personal protective equipment for the environment they'll be working in, and we'll ensure that we have positive communication so we'll be able to reach every crew and maintain good accountability of everyone at all times. So with all that said and the groundwork laid out in a very abbreviated conference call, as we said, this would likely be taking place over the several days preceding a storm like this. I'd like to find out from our partners that are on the call, which I believe is the network from Veolia and TECO, if they have any questions or if they can give us a snapshot of what assistance they may be able to provide.
How do you define a crew?
A crew, for explanatory purposes, is a two-person operation comprised of what we consider a lead mechanic who has the expertise and knowledge to basically take the directions and perform whatever operations they're going to be given in a safe manner and according to procedures. The second person of the crew could be equivalent in the same type of knowledge, or it could be a junior member, general utility worker. And they usually come in with a vehicle with all the tools on a particular vehicle and with the capability of operating that equipment and also responding to a situation and assessing what needed to be done and seeking assistance from supervisors or other crews if needed.
Oh, so two people operating in a truck, kind of as an island, taking direction from a central location. Okay. Any issue with it, union or non-union?
No. Not during an event like this.
Yeah, typically during an event where we're looking for mutual assistance, the issue with the union or non-union is not a factor because everyone is engaged at that point.
Okay.
Typically with electric, I would say more than half are non-union when they come out here. So that's usually not an issue.
Okay, fair enough.
I'd like to expand on the crew. So if we were asking for 25 crews, would we expect one supervisor for 5 crews? Or this was a question. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, typically when you're requesting that many crews, supervision is very helpful. So either one supervisor for either 5 to up to 10 crews would be sufficient. So if you have supervisors available to supervise your crews when they come out, that would be expected and welcomed.
So let me give you some examples. A lot of this is still in our memories from a year ago. So the diversity of the crews it's a pretty broad spectrum. So in this scenario that has just been laid out, it's we probably preemptively shut down a section of our system in preparation for the storm, and then conditions progressively got worse, and we ended up having to make a decision to shut our entire system down. So in that case, we would expect from the tidal flooding that we'd have a number of our structures that were underwater, and they need to be pumped. Adding on to this, we had 10 inches of rain, so even the structures that are not along the coastal line, which would be more inland in Manhattan, probably also experienced a significant amount of flooding. And we probably weren't able to keep up with it during the storm because of the high winds that were occurring. So normally we're trying to combat this as the storms occur, and in this case, it appears we made a decision to shut it down and then waited for the storm to subside. So we typically are going to need a number of crews to pump out structures just so we can get into the structures and assess the conditions of the structures and if there's any damages that occurred. This a lot of often done with contractors that have been trained to recognize the hazards in our structures. We also have other crews within the company that are not in STEAM. They may be in our construction groups or in our gas groups that would assist with this, but under this scenario, I would expect a lot of them probably would have been diverted to higher priorities on the electric system or gas system. So we were looking for people who could pump structures. Two-person crew can roll out with a truck, with pumps capable of giving them a direction or of the structures or locations of the structures, and they would pump those into our sewer systems if they were accepting water. Once we get past that, then we're going to come up with a plan of bringing our system back in stages. So we'd start having mains scheduled to be turned back on, coordinating with our system ops and our generation facilities. So in that case, you get into a more specialized requirement where we're going to have crews knowledgeable of the operations of what it takes to turn a main on. So we have specific procedures, and probably, we may split crews up. So we may take our lead mechanics here and put them with a mutual aid party, just so we can get more crews out on the field. We'd be looking for people to assist in monitoring drainage conditions as they occur. We also experienced, as the mains were back on, there were tremendous vapor conditions and stacks being installed, so we just needed people to stand by in certain locations. In areas where we had electric power out and we needed pumps running, we needed somebody to monitor generators and pumps that were in place until we got electric restored. So at this point, yeah, we'd be looking for as many skilled people as you had, but we'll also be looking for anybody that could really lend a hand with any of those types of options. Eventually, we're going to start turning, once the mains are turned on, we're going to start turning individual customers on. So we have crews that do turn-ons of services and crews that do turn-on of mains. So hopefully that gives you a better perspective. We're assuming here that there's really no damages and that we're into construction and excavation type activities and restoring mains, no water.
No asbestos is released, no, expansion joints blown or anything like that.
Yeah,
no water
for the sake of this exercise, yes, there is no environmental incident.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. I would add the crews would probably be if anything like that happened, they would respond to the more normal routine.
Right.
Not that anything would be routine in this type of...
Right. If there were a situation with a water hammer or asbestos, we would send our own crews for that piece of it. So it wouldn't be a factor for the mutual assistance crews.
Okay.
It's another question for Rich, and it's probably in the agreement.
It becomes more of an awareness issue than anything else at that point. Yeah. If there's an asbestos release, just letting people know and just keeping them away from it, that's all.
Right.
Yes.
So I think on these events, there's restrictions coming in and out of Manhattan. So IDs, fully stocked trucks coming up with more than one pump. All those were things that we would expect.
That would be one of the issues. That would also be why it would be so critical for us to have a good head count and vehicle count of who's coming from where so we could facilitate their access. But that's a very good point. We would have to credential people first. We had a question regarding confined space rescue services. Prior to anyone entering any confined space, we would follow company procedures and ensure that we had appropriate PPE, and we had done all the air monitoring and other things first. And we have a mechanism to employ the services of either the New York City Police Department or New York City Fire Department for rescue services above and beyond what we can take care of just within the crew itself. There will always be somebody outside the confined space to provide oversight. So I hope that answers the question. If not, feel free to type it in again for further clarification. If anybody from Veolia or TICO wants to speak up on what they might be able to provide given the scenario, we could start getting a rough head count.
TICO's here. We sort of have good news, bad news. We can provide you half of our crews, but we have 2 crews, so we can only send 1.
One crew is more than we had, so yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Can you send 2 supervisors with that one?
Well, actually, I'm trying to put my incident command system hat on here and think of how we could work this with Veolia. And Vinny, you'll probably have to jump in a little bit on this. On the Boston side, we've got a number of crews that we could put together, and some of the reasons for my question was they would not necessarily all be union. I'm thinking of people like some of the engineering people that go in and support when we have, events. I mean, even myself, I've gone out and I've actually helped put steam lines back into service. So you may end up with a hodgepodge of, of people in the crews, but we're all capable and we've all been trained on how to do this. I mean, right off the top of my head, for something like this, I would say initially we could probably come up with 4 crews out of Boston pretty quick. And plus a supervisor, and I don't see that as a problem, possibly even 5 crews. Out of Philly, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure how many guys you would have, Vinny, but Pat and you guys would have a better idea for that. In Baltimore, it would be the same thing.
Yeah, we have about 6 crews in Philly in distribution. So based on this scenario, 2 to 5 inches of rain, but we didn't get that much, so we're restoring now, pumping out a few locations. We should be able to free up 2 crews probably by Saturday, maybe Saturday morning. We'd have 2 crews from Philly. I'll say 1 crew from Baltimore. They're not on the line right now, so at least 1 crew from Baltimore, 2 from Philly. There's a couple of questions on the communications, radios. Are they going to be outfitted with radios when they get there, or do we need to bring anything?
Our intention we would have our own radio system, and we provide them radios when they arrive.
Okay. And PPE, I know that the basic, hard hat, shoes, glasses. Beyond that, anything else that they should be bringing?
Vinny, that's actually a question I was going to put on that also, because one of the things when a requesting organization makes a request, I think that's one of the things is to be in accordance with their safety program. I think that's information we need to know before we send anybody out, just to make sure they come ready.
That's a very good point, and one of the things that we do early on is there's a discussion with the requesting and the receiving organization on what the expectations are of those crews as far as what, they're going to come with their pumps and equipment. Not only that, but they're going to have steel-tip boots. They're going to have, their hard hat. We could provide rain gear and other PPE that might be necessary, gloves, etc. But like the boots would be expected from the actual crews that are coming on site.
Okay, you might want, as part of your program, you might want to make sure these are the standard things that you're going to be required to bring. Anything else above and beyond that, the requesting organization can supply.
So what's the PPE to enter a manhole? You could provide.
I know the answer to it.
Yeah, I guess the simplest thing is bring your PPE that you wear, and if it needs to be upgraded, we're gonna provide it.
I agree.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
We don't
One more
want people
question on equipment.
to get something that, at this point, we just probably want people to get here as quickly as possible.
Okay,
One more
question.
Was there another question on equipment?
Yeah, equipment, trash pumps, and we use these high-capacity pumps here, initially when the system is down, just to pump out, so that we could bring some of those as well as the high-temperature pumps.
Yeah, that would be great, and part of it would be, and obviously you're not gonna be able to tell us here, but how many pumps you can actually send us would be something that would be helpful during an actual call. If you have, if you're sending a total of 10 crews and you have 20 pumps, we'll accept the 20 pumps.
Really? Okay. Yeah, we'll
Or
look at that
even,
in more detail.
Stacks. In Sandy, we were cranking out stacks, making them hodgepodge, just because we needed as many as we can get. So materials like that may also be a type of request.
Yeah, in Philly, we can furnish stacks. We're having a conversation here with distribution and engineering as this is going on, and things are coming up, good points. We might have to have a larger truck to put all the equipment on so that we don't overload. We use pickup trucks here for our work vehicles. They have, the welders are on those trucks, so we'd probably have a separate equipment truck that could take the equipment up, pumps, generators, and whatever else that might be a problem carrying on the pickup trucks. So for now, you can say 2 crews from Philly, 1 from Baltimore, and 4 to 5 from Boston, from Veolia.
And just to let you know that, right, the 4 from Boston, by the way, part of the way I'm thinking that could probably be made to work is that we'd be able to send the crews out, and we'd probably end up having to backfill some of the Boston needs with some of the engineering folks that we have here. And that's, of course, assuming we can get that through our union people, which in an emergency, I think they'd probably cooperate.
So I have a question, or perhaps more of a comment. I'm just trying to find out, here at Con Ed, when we have outages, we are required to have an engineer who will provide oversight in order to turn on the main, where we have to verify drainage before we have steam introduced into the section of pipe. I'm trying to find out if other entities are, performing the same operation, and if during this operation here, this tabletop exercise, if you would have such engineers available for us as well.
Did everyone hear that?
I heard it, but I'm not quite sure what he was getting at.
So basically, here at Con Ed, we require an engineer to be present during the turn-on of a steam main. And the first question is, do you have the similar procedures on your end? Second question is, would you have engineers that you would be able to provide to us to assist us in turning on the mains as well?
I know in Boston, we can provide at least 1 or 2 engineers to support you on that. And as far as having an engineer there when they put it on, that's not necessarily a requirement, but it is required that we have a permit that defines what valves are going to be operated in what order, and that's signed off by engineering.
Okay, good. So you would be able to provide 1 to 2 engineers from Boston?
Yeah. Hell, I'll come myself. I like New York.
So I like to expand on that thought, because during these rain events, we have folks that go out and assess situations. I guess a question of Rich and Steam Distribution, Rob, if they could provide folks in the cars, engineers, would we want that? To go out and patrol areas, look what area, during post. This is a question again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Almost like damage assessors.
Yeah, during, I know it would be hard when something like this,
you would.
in the East Coast, because everyone is not really sure where it's hidden until 6 hours before, so everybody's probably holding their resources. And
that's what all the utilities do during an event. They hold their resources till they know the damage.
So you pretty much, are dealing with the resources that you have during it. Afterwards, what we experienced in Sandy was we had a portion of the system operating, and if we continue to get bad weather, so we're trying to bring the system back, and we have plans in place and crews in place to do this emergency work to get everyone back. But if some other event happens, like a rain event, on top of this, we needed people to cover it. So we fortunately didn't get rain. We did get some snow. We did start getting cold weather. We got a lot of people calling up for their service. You know, people who are not affected looking for seasonal turn-on. So you had normal work that was trying to get into your queue. But we also had areas that had no electric, and like I said, we had people patrolling the system because we couldn't get any real-time data from some of our remote systems and our telemetrics on what was going on. So, yeah, even those types of resources probably helpful.
I have another question for you. Is there a need for any portable boilers? I'm thinking of starting up some of your isolated, if you had any power plants that have steam auxiliaries that you need steam to get them started up, would you need a portable boiler for those?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
We typically don't provide portable boilers unless it's something that we are taking them down for our own purposes. But typically the customers are required to get their own boilers, so typically we don't have them.
Okay.
Do you have them, or you have a contract to provide them?
No, we actually have our own one portable boiler, and you know one of the advantages to that is we have a plant that's has steam auxiliaries, you know, for the fans and stuff, and if we needed to get it back in service, we could use that portable boiler for that. That's what I was thinking.
What kind of capacity does that boiler have?
About 18,000 pounds an hour steam.
Okay, that's good to know.
Oh no, it's there. We use it for the customers. We use it for our plants. I mean, it's a pretty good boiler.
Good.
But again, it's, you know, if you don't need it to get your plants going, obviously not something you're going to want to have brought down.
No, but I don't know if we do get requests from customers of can we get them a boiler, and we usually are referring them to
vendors,
providers, and vendors. So.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's something that you would offer, that you would want to provide to a particular customer.
Like I said, we offer them to our customers up here in the Boston area, and it's actually available, I think, even for Philadelphia, isn't it, Vinny? If you guys need it.
Yeah, we usually get it locally across the river.
There was some sensitive customers that really were looking for us from an ETR perspective, that if we could tell them we were bringing them back in 2 days, then they wouldn't go out and get it. But if it was going to be 5 to 7 days, then they were considering bringing one in.
Yeah, like one police plaza, right?
Yeah.
We had a follow-up question concerning the confined space rescue issue. I'll try to address it. All our personnel that would be exposed to a confined space are provided with the OSHA-required confined space awareness training. As part of that, we have a mechanism to employ, as I said, the New York City Police and Fire Departments to provide assistance. The question was, have we discussed response times with those agencies? We don't just discuss response times with them, we exercise with them annually. In fact, we have an exercise coming up next month with the police department's rescue team on just that subject. So we definitely are very sensitive to that. And another follow-up question on PPE was, will respirators be required? Obviously, that's going to be on a location-by-location basis. So it would require an analysis by someone on site, and they would address what the appropriate PPE is.
So let me just jump in. For the sake of this exercise and for the operation that we're looking to do, respirators would not be required. If respiratory protection were required for any operation, we would utilize in-house personnel to take care of that, or a contractor. We wouldn't be looking for the mutual assistance crews to be putting on respirators.
That works.
I hope that answered the question from whoever asked it. Okay.
So let me provide maybe a little bit more broader perspective. The crews that have been identified up to this point are
are all your own labor force?
Yes.
It's not external, it's not contractors that you
No, we may
have?
end up using contractors to backfill our needs in Boston at that point, or our own, non-union people, if it's allowed. But it's not going to be, we're not going to send contractors down to you.
Okay. Because we may.
Well, if you have contractors available.
Because sometimes our own contractors get pulled off to support other commodities.
One of the things that happens quite often, especially in the electric side, is that in addition to the crews, we also receive contractors. The companies that have agreements with the contractors, they'll release the crews to come work for us for that period of time. So if you have contractors that you could release to us, that would be in addition to the crews that you're providing. So I don't know if you have any of those available, but that could also add to what we're looking to accomplish.
We actually do. We have arrangements with some crews specifically for in our incident command system if we have an emergency event here in Boston. I mean, we do have contractors with blanket purchase orders that we can grab. We've had them trained, and they're part of our ICS system. I'd have to see how far that arrangement goes, though. I don't know if we can just say, go down to New York.
Well, it might not be that you could do that, but you might be able to refer to us who the contractor is and give us an introduction to them and let them know what we're looking for.
Sure. Yep, we could do that.
What support do they provide?
Oh, it all depends. It's if we have a particularly really bad rainy day, if a hurricane's coming through, I mean, we'll bring contractors in to help pump manholes sometimes. If we actually have like a high energy line breakout in the street somewhere, we'll bring them in to help us with the asbestos remediation, the cleanup, the excavations, anything to get through to the point where we can take it back to a normal construction excavation type of an arrangement where the event portion of that is over.
Great.
Okay.
I'd like
the other
to
item
jump in in providing people and contractors where our 2 crews that we have available, we could turn that into 4 crews by supplementing our crews with one of our local contractors, right, and splitting our crews up with a contractor that we typically use. And that's something we did here in Philadelphia last year during Hurricane Sandy, is we doubled our crews by supplementing with contractors, one of our typical mechanics with a contractor. So we had many more people, much more equipment available then.
So Pat and Vinny, can we change your number to 4 then, as a result of that supplement with the contractors, rather than 2?
Yes.
That's how I got the 4 for Boston. Basically, is like I said, we would backfill, any additional needs here in Boston, and that's how we get 4.
Do you guys see any issues with the crews coming to New York? Would there be any pushback from their side, or is it something that you discussed with them already, or?
I'd have to check with Don to see if he's had any discussions with him. I think this is something that from a regional area, I think we need to do some training on and start getting some feedback from the crews.
Yeah, I doubt very much we would have any issue out of Philadelphia sending crews. I'll tell you, September 11th, we had every man in the department ready to come when we called up to see if you guys needed assistance. And it's a financial uptake for the guys. They're going to be making money when they're coming, so there won't be any issue from this end.
Yeah, I doubt it would be a problem with Boston either.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Typically, the company that's sending assistance, the personnel are compensated for that. They're not, they're getting paid well for it. So typically, there's no issue with them leaving and going to a different area to work. So I've seen in electric and gas crews, as I mentioned, coming from all parts of the country to come here and help us for weeks at a time. So I don't think it would be an issue, but it's something that you should be running by your folks on your end.
Correct. And I also think while participation in MAID is voluntary, the crews themselves,
they're voluntary as well.
Voluntary as
yes.
well. If a particular individual doesn't go because they have personal needs at home or...
That's a great point. Rob Boyle, who's the general manager here in distribution, he just mentioned that the crews that are coming out to assist are on a volunteer basis also. So if a person doesn't want to go to New York because they can't be away from their home for 2 weeks at a time, we shouldn't be forcing them to do so. Typically, you should find enough volunteers to supplement it without forcing anyone to do it.
Well, the other side of that too is, you're looking at this 2 weeks. The reality is that if, we send in the people immediately who we can get. At the end of a few days, or probably closer to say a week, we may end up having to shift crews, and just because of the situations that we have. And I don't think you'd have any big issues with that. You'd still end up with the same complement, just different people.
Yeah. That's fine, and I agree with that. We do encourage, though, trying to keep the same people as long as possible so that there's less turnover, less need for retraining. But understandably, after a certain amount of time, someone may want to switch out. We wouldn't have an issue with that.
Right. I mean, if you get somebody who says, "Yeah, I'll go for a week," well, that's better than saying I'll go for a week or I won't go at all. I mean, you're
100% right. We would take them. Yes.
We had a question about what about lockout, tagout?
What's the actual question?
That is what we have.
We have our, here in Con Edison, we have our own method of ensuring that we're working on the right equipment. So when the crews come in, when we go through their training process, we would go through what the process is on restoring equipment and ensuring that it's not live when they're operating. And then they wouldn't be operating the valves anyway. They would be done by our own people.
Or if they were part of a crew, they'd be working with a mechanic who could operate the valve.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be an issue. Plus, we would train them on what our process is to ensure that they're following the right procedures and they're not being put in harm's way.
The other valuable lesson we got from Sandy was resource availability. So you know who you have today, who's working in your department, you know your crews. But one of the things we did also was we went back to our human resources department and found out anybody who's ever worked in STEAM in the past. There's a lot of movement in Con Ed. I'm not sure what it's like in your own companies, but people who had worked 20 years in STEAM and moved on to electric or gas or some other job, we identified those people and brought them back to support us, and they had a wealth of knowledge of not only the system, but of, we could use them as part of a crew at times as well. Some of them were full mechanics, so just, sometimes you just think about who you got today, but if you have other people who may be in different parts, maybe not in the operating areas, but they have skills that can be used, then they may be available resources too.
Are there any other questions? So based on our preliminary poll, we've come up with approximately 13 crews. I guess it would be from 10 to 13 crews depending on total availability, and that's augmenting as necessary with contractors. So we have about 12 crews and 2 engineers. So we're about halfway towards our goal, but that's a huge step in the right direction. Obviously, we would continue with follow-up calls, and before I move on, I just want to make sure there are no other questions. If there are any questions, if you want to speak up now concerning the scenario.
One thing to point out is, we're looking at what we can send to you immediately, but the reality is there are other distribution systems a little further out that within, a few days they could send people as well.
Yeah, and that's one of our goals is we want to ensure we get enough participants, people signed on to the MAID agreement that should we have a situation like this, we could reach out to places beyond just the northeast of the country. And that's one of the purposes of addressing what the plan actually does and what it could do for you in the event of an incident. So, for those people that are on the call that are not participating members, again, we believe that this is a great opportunity for all you companies to be part of the program, to have this ability to reach out to your sister companies and ask for assistance if you should need it. So at this point, I think we're going to turn it over to Chris.
Yeah, I think we've canvassed our participants. We have our roll call and what they can provide. We would address the need for follow-up phone calls and determine if there were any other issues that we needed to resolve before moving on. But then we'd be able to go offline and begin the agreement process to get any required documents executed so that we could get this assistance moving. With that, it really brings us to the end of the exercise, and I believe we're going to entertain general questions from everyone on the call, and for that I'll turn it back over to Rich.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of anyone from the panel? I think we did a good job answering questions. Rob?
Yeah. How many parties have signed on to MAID right now?
Currently, there are 6 companies that have signed on to MAID. Is that correct, Len?
Yes.
Okay, there are 6 currently, including Con Edison and Veolia and TECO. We're looking, obviously, to expand that to more of the IDEA membership. We believe that this is a document, this is a process that will help you. It's like life insurance. Nobody wants to ever use it, but it's great to have it if something should happen to you. So this is a program that doesn't cost you anything. If you're signed on, you have the ability to request assistance. You have the ability to respond and provide assistance. It not only helps your fellow companies, but it shows a lot of good faith to your regulators. Any other questions?
We actually had a question from here at Con Ed. Would anyone be interested in a copy of our sequencing engineering training program? Did I get that right?
Yeah, or
okay.
Even want to participate and learn of what we do and get the people up trained.
Okay.
All right. So the manager here of engineering, Dalatram, he just mentioned that, in addition to being able to provide you with the procedure that we utilize for our sequence engineers, we would also be able to talk to you and maybe demonstrate what we do and how we do it if you're interested in doing something similar in your company.
TECO would like to see it.
Okay, great.
So would Veolia.
Okay, great, and we'll provide that, and we'll follow up after the call with both of you. Okay. At this point, I'd like to personally thank everyone for participating on the call. I'd like to turn it over to Vinny Badali for his closing remarks. Vinny?
Thanks, Rich. Great job, Rich, Chris, everyone else. Good questions, comments. I think, if nothing else, it gets you to think about what you might need to support your own emergencies. So maybe we need to get our own houses in order to some extent, get equipment that we might need locally, and as we do that, then think about how we might be able to share and participate in mutual assistance should the call come. So I think it served 2 purposes for us today. So with that, I hope everyone else is ready to sign on. If you go to the website, as it says there at the bottom, you'll also be able to get the guidebook and any materials you need to sign up for mutual assistance. And I hope to see a rush of those coming in. And look forward to having another one of these next year. So,
thank you, Vinny. This is Len back at IDEA. Here's your contact information for Rich and Chris, and thank you both for our distinguished facilitators, our panelists, all attendees. Again, this is the first of what will be an annual tabletop exercise. Next slide. Here we are at IDEA. You guys all know us. Recording of this event will be available shortly, and we'll send a link to all attendees. We'll also post it on the IDEA website. And then just one last appeal, please stay on the line. There'll be a survey that will follow. 8 questions. They're extremely valuable to us. The information will be golden. Your feedback is extremely important as we move the MAID program open and as we get it off the ground. Thank you all for attending today. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Thank you, everyone.
So now